Hello and welcome to Tabletop Oddity. My name is Jay and today I'm going to have a quick run through of some basic Veers and Snowtrooper lists. Now the Snowtroopers aren't necessarily in every list, but it just gives you a basic idea of what you can expect if you were to make a list with Veers, or indeed if you're going to face a list against Veers. So we'll go through just a couple of lists. Two of them are quite samey and the third one a little bit different. I mean, I really like the third one, but nobody seems to agree with me at the minute. But we'll crack on with the list, shall we? This is list number one. I'm in a weird position just so you can see everything. General Veers, I've gone with Commanding Presence, but you don't necessarily need Commanding Presence. You could give a comlink to one of your speeder bikes, 2 units of Stormtroopers, 2 units of Snowtroopers, an ATST with mortar launcher, and I'll explain in a second, 2 naked speeder bikes. Now, the DLT, we all know that's strong. I had to drop a trooper mainly because points, simple as that, but you could in theory drop the impact grenades and targeting scopes on one of the Snowtroopers and get an extra trooper. It's completely up to you. The lists aren't necessarily my recommendations, they just sort of give you an example of what you could do. Now, as I said, you could drop Commanding Presence and get comlink, that's fine. But I really like the idea of the Snowtroopers with impact grenades and the Flame Trooper, ignoring blast and cover. Very good against, what's it called? The Airspeeder, the T-47 Airspeeder. Works against that, works against units in cover, obviously, but you don't get the impact. But an all-round great unit. The problem it has is getting there. It's all about that range 1. Now, I think the mortar launcher might actually help with the range 1, because it's basically going to allow you to put suppression down at a very long range. Your ATST from afar can actually help your flame troopers move across the board by suppressing specific units at the right time, maybe before they've shot. So that's why I've gone with the mortar launcher, but you could in any of the weapons, pretty fine. You could drop something else and take another weapon. That's what one of my opponents did when I went to the Element Games. His list was very similar to this, except he didn't have the flame troopers, but the same number of speeder bikes and stuff like that. And he had 2 weapons on his ATST, but he didn't have Vice, General Vice. So pretty interesting. The speeder bikes, I like naked. I think they do a decent job. As I said, if you want to get comlink to control them, you can drop points and get them. But 2 speeder bikes really pack a punch. If you position them well and you move them correctly, they can do a fantastic job. So that's this is a list I feel like you could see quite often, something like this. The next list is very similar. It's just with 3 speeder bikes, ditching the Snowtroopers because they're fairly expensive to run that many. Well, it was 4 troopers this time, we're just running 3. Sticking with the old classic, the DLT. The DLT-19 is such a fantastic weapon that you don't have to rely on, you don't have to get into short range. It's 1 to 4, I believe, with the 2 red dice with impact. Veers is just naked because I don't have the points. Going back to this one, why does Veers not have Esteemed Leader? I don't think it's worth it, because Esteemed Leader is basically designed, you can't see, but Esteemed Leader is basically designed to keep Veers alive, which I don't necessarily think is required. I don't know if my face was covering the mortar launcher, but it's the suppressive that we're talking about that gives it its extra suppression. But yeah, Veers naked, keep him alive by keeping it at the back. I'm not trying to keep him alive by sacrificing troops, but that's each to their own. In this one, I've gone with the concussion launcher because this one's all about getting the ATST up close and personal and using that to ignore blast. Same with the speeder bikes, run them naked, position them well down the flanks, get them around the cover, pretty decent. So those are the 2, I think those are the 2 sort of more standardy kind of lists. Obviously people will tinker them to their own personal taste, that kind of thing. That's completely fine and normal. Nobody's going to kick off at that point. Oh, I'm just knocking the desk. My take on these lists are really it's the speeder bikes that are doing the work. I was just speaking about them, but they're surprisingly really powerful. They get impact 2 if you've got 2 of them alive. It's impact 1 obviously if you've only got 1 of them alive. But my opponent, Paul was his name, I believe, when I was at Element Games, he had 2 units, and just them combined with the DLTs and the ATST just managed to just gradually whittle down my ATST, which I wanted, but at the same time, once it's gone, it leaves a big gap in your army. You need to, if your opponent's going to do that, I need to do a lot with the rest of my army, and I didn't necessarily do that in that game. So very good if you want to take that. And now if I had some AT-RTs, they would have just got munched. They would have been able to kill 2 of them really quite quickly. So Yeah, I really like the speeder bikes. The speeder bikes are the things that are really packing the punch. But what if you don't want to run 2 or 3 of them? And this is a list that I actually quite like. It's my fully kitted out ATST. Now I spoke about this in the ATST video, like when I did that, and I said it was almost all or just one. Granted, I actually feel like now there is a place for 2 if you've got the points and stuff like that, but I really like having all of them because, right, the mortar launcher, you're unlikely to be able to get once you get into range 2. You need to serendipitously have a unit at range 4 that you could suppress. But it happens enough, and there's only 6 turns in the game that 1 or 2 devastating turns where you actually just decimate a unit or 2 can actually like turn the tide of the battle in your favour. Now you could run snowtroopers here. I've just got 2 units of snowtroopers, 3 units of stormtroopers. You know, take your pick, but we're missing extra stormtrooper on the stormtroopers. 1 unit of speeder bikes. I do like 2, but you know, that's just me. And yeah, I just really like the fully decked out one. It's just, I like it. So for those of you who don't know, General Veers lets you basically, you gain Arsenal 2, but you already have Arsenal 2, so you can fire all of your weapons. Now the twin blaster is at range 4. The twin light blaster cannon is only range 3. So you're not doing everything from range 4, but if you're only at range 4, you could just use the mortar launcher as well for some extra dice. But once you get into range 2, and range 2 is sort of where it comes into its own, you're gonna, that's the wrong one. You're gonna get this concussion grenade launcher giving you blast. Now you'll be able to use 3 weapons. You'll be able to use this, the twin blaster cannon, and the twin light blaster cannon, all against a unit in cover. So that's a lot of dice you're throwing. And in games, I was literally just sort of deleting the occasional unit with this. Like if you fire all 3 weapons at an infantry unit in cover, the cover doesn't matter. They're pretty much going to go down. Especially if they're rebels with white dice, they're going to get absolutely shreked by that. Stormtroopers, a couple are actually quite likely to survive, but you've done so much damage that it almost doesn't matter. And then if you're in the good position, you just ready yourself and fire again next turn. Or you can take an aim and fire again with just 2 weapons, depending on what fits that situation. I like it. I can understand it's not that useful. You know, if you want the points and you want more speeder bikes, fantastic. The speeder bikes are great. But I just thought this is what Veers allows you to do. It really lets you put points in places you may not have already. You may want to put points, but you didn't have the points. Like a decked out ATST, like a 2nd or a 3rd unit of speeder bikes. That's his selling point, basically, and that's why, like when I went to the Element Games, a lot of people were running him. I don't know if it was just because he was new. I didn't think so. I think it's because they just wanted everything else in the list. Now, I do feel like Vader isn't out of the game. He still can do quite a lot of work, especially against beginners. I think if you're just moving forward, then people don't necessarily know how to deal with him. He's obviously better if you just don't get close. But those are just 3 lists I feel like people might want to run that are okay. If you agree with me, that's fine. If you don't, well, post the list to your link on either Tabletop Admiral or wherever, and I'll gladly have a look. These are just examples of what I might do. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I said something vaguely interesting. Have a most beautiful day, and oh wait, no, like, share and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Have a most beautiful day, and goodbye. Bye guys.